My name is Camillo, and I've never ridden a black trail before. It's the most stressful part of the whole day.
Welcome, fellow punters, to the first of hopefully many videos where I help someone step up their level of mountain biking. In this episode, I'm going to help Camillo successfully ride his first ever black rated trail, here in Squamish, BC in Canada. I'm going to help him set up his bike, dial in some skills, build his confidence, and then take him step by step down a trail called Rupert, a popular black trail in the area built by local builder Gary Macfarlane and some volunteers. So let's start off by getting to know a bit about Camillo's relationship with mountain biking.
I started a long time ago, and then I went off of it for a long time because, life happened and had a family and all that sort of thing. And then I had a relative visit up here, and we took them to Whistler. We rented some really great bikes. I fell in love again. Finally, last year, I'd saved up enough money to finally buy a decent full suspension mountain bike.
We meet up in a parking lot near the trailhead with the goal of seeing if we can get his bike as dialed in as possible. Naturally, there are some limitations with what we can do here, but I was confident I could find a couple of things to tweak on his bike. But where did he get this machine from? Because it kind of looks a bit familiar to me.
I bought the bike off of Darren Bearclaw. Didn't even know it was him when I was communicating back and forth. It was just his handle was the claw.
The most important thing to know is your tyre pressure. So this is where I started. How do you check your tyre pressure?
I checked it last night. I'm at like 21.5 on the front and 23 in the back.
I was impressed by how well Camillo knew his numbers here, but he did say he measured them last night. So what are they now?
No, 19.5.
19.5, see? Luckily, I brought a pump with me and we pumped him back up to his preferred pressure. 2 psi might not sound like a lot, but it could be the difference between getting a puncture or even denting a rim. Camillo puts on his fantastic Shimano shoes and we take a look at his suspension. Just bounce around your bike.
Okay.
The night before meeting up, I had actually done a bit of research into the history of Camillo's bike. So I actually messaged Darren. I'm doing a video with a guy that bought your old bike. Did you put any tokens or anything in it? And he said, no, it's just stock. I also needed to understand how his bike felt. Oh my God. This is not a OneUp Components. So I got on and had a bounce around on it. While myself and Camillo are completely different human beings, it gave me a little bit more info on how the bike was set up right now. How do you have your bike set up?
I usually just pick it up and ride it.
Okay. How did you set it up in the first place?
I didn't.
After a bit more questioning, it turns out that he had taken it to the DVO guys at Crankworks one year for a quick once-over. He also said that every time he connects his shock pump, it's always a lot lower than when he left it after pumping up last time.
Because it's supposed to be 170 to 200, I kept going down to 150.
40 seems like quite a lot. I plugged in Camillo's shock pump and discovered what had been happening.
When I put it on the top.
The top?
Like the air canister on the top. It's got its own air pressure.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's why that goes down so much.
Yes.
Right, okay, yeah, because
yeah.
this is tiny. This is the important one.
Right.
This is the one to check. It turns out that he had just been topping up the piggy black, or bladder as DVO call it, which handles the small bump sensitivity. It says it's got 120 psi in it. I pumped it up to 130 psi as a starting point and checked out his sack. It's worth noting that this was filmed a while ago and also outside. However, I acknowledge that we should have been wearing face coverings. Yeah, you're probably too soft. We're going to go with 135. We noted down Camillo's air pressures so that he will always have them to hand if he needs to check them, which he should do once a week or every 2 weeks, I'd say. Camillo had 95 psi in his fork, which seemed like a lot. But I had no experience of DVO suspension, and after finding no air pressure recommendations on the fork itself, I turned to the website. So it says here that if you're 165 pounds, you should probably have like 115 psi in your fork.
Oh, that seems okay.
Unless you're lying about your weight, Camillo. We're all friends here. The manufacturer's recommendations are the best place to start setting up your suspension, and you might even find that it works perfectly fine for you. They also have recommendations for how many clicks of rebound you'll need, as rebound is always relative to the air pressure that you run. I started out by counting how many clicks there were from fully closed. 1, 16, 17, 8. So 17, which is why I kind of figured the more rebound you have, the slower the suspension will be. 17 clicks. Now that's probably right for maybe 95 PSI, but also it's not what they recommend. We're gonna try 14 here. 13, 14. So this is slower. The rear shock is a bit more complicated as the rebound will depend on how the bike is designed. I counted 9 clicks from closed, and there's a maximum of 10 clicks on this shock. This tells me that Camillo had been riding a bike that was probably set up a little bit too fast, and the suspension could be quite unsettling. If you're completely hindered by how you had this set up, and you probably felt quite unstable, which is probably why you haven't attempted the black trails yet. Given that we've put a bit more air in this shock, and we've started to slow the rebound down a fair bit from where we had it before, we'll need to see how this works with the fork. I find it a lot easier to balance the rear of the bike to the front when it comes to rebound, and balance is what we're looking for. Eventually, I got to a ballpark that I was happy with. Now, I'm not claiming to be an expert here or a suspension wizard, but I feel confident that I can find a better starting point than when we were at when Camillo rolled up into the parking lot. Camillo bounced around as well and said that he felt a lot happier. Time for the cockpit. I rolled the bars forward. They were very rolled back, and you can see that this is putting Camillo way too far over the rear of the bike and not as centered as he should be. And with rolling them forward, we needed to get the brake levers in a better position. Using my phone's spirit level, I set the levers at 35 degrees in this position. All your strength is in the end of your fingertip, and you're braking with like this bit of your finger. So let's try and screw this in a bit. How does that feel right hand and left hand?
I think it feels better. I feel like also when I'm pulling in here, it's hitting my knuckle.
It needs to go out, and then also what I've done there is I've moved the lever starting position out, so the bite point isn't quite so close to the bars. It's kind of what I expected, really. Camillo has different priorities in his life. They're way more significant than mine. And he hasn't thought about like how his bike's set up, and the suspension wasn't balanced. The cockpit hasn't really been thought about. Just from what I've done here, he's going to feel way more stable on the bike. And it's going to change how much enjoyment he has on the trail. But there seems to be like this negative connotation that doing this is somehow weird and stupid. That's what I want everyone watching this video to think about. With that done, we headed up to our warm-up trail. We stopped on a small rock feature that he didn't feel confident on. Camillo definitely needed to find a better body position. He was far too forward on the bike and not stable at all. I noticed that this could be due to the fact that he had his feet so far forward on his pedals. It's important to be able to drop your heels when riding, and he was being very limited by having his feet where they were. Yes, I've rolled his bars forward, but he needed to spread out a bit more. Moving the pedal axle to be more under the ball of his foot should make it easier for him to drop his heels, and he can then move his butt to be more over the bottom bracket, which it did. And by stretching himself across the bike, he's going to be more stable. The other thing that he needed to do was not throw his weight back, which then loses the grip that he's got on the front wheel. Of course, it's a delicate balance of having pressure on that front wheel, but not so much that you're probably going to go over the bars when you hit a compression. That's why pushing onto the bars is the right cue for this, and it really helped Camillo. He was now able to look ahead and steer the bike where it needed to go.
Did you have any reservations about today?
Oh yeah, I was super nervous.
What were you nervous about?
I didn't know 100% like what the features we were going to be doing were and what to expect and how difficult they might be.
I did also notice that Camillo was still very high up on the bike, and that was likely down to how high his bars were. So dropping them down a bit should bring him closer to that front axle and give him better control over his direction. A couple more runs on this wooden roller, some final tweaks, and we can see Camillo in his best riding positioning yet.
Look how much stronger he is. Oh my god.
This blue trail is called Leave of Absence, built by Rob Phoenix and some volunteers, and it's a blue trail with black rated options scattered down it, like this roller with a wooden ladder at the bottom. He was initially very nervous about it, but I wanted to show him how you can analyze a feature like this and break it down to be more manageable. If you know precisely where you need to go, you're removing a variable that can cause indecision. Visualizing what's going to happen when you ride it is also going to remove an unknown factor which can cause fear.
What was it that held you back from trying a black rated trail?
I think it was just the fear.
Okay.
The fear of how difficult it was going to be, crashing. I still want biking to be fun, and if I'm scared the whole time, it's not really going to be that fun.
I rode the feature for Camillo so he could see how the bike would roll over any of the gaps in the rocks, and then it was his turn. With no hesitation, he dropped straight into the feature. I told him to go back up again and do it twice more, and he smashed it. So now Camillo knows that he can ride a black feature. He knows how his bike is going to react on something like this, and he can now analyze a feature properly before making a decision to ride it or not. How did Camillo feel about this coaching though?
Totally useful, totally helpful. Without the confidence that you gave me with the coaching stuff, I don't think I would have been able to do all the features.
With his bike set up, some techniques learned, and new confidence on black rated features, it was time to head up to Rupert. But while we warm back up, hit the link in the description below and check out my merch store. There are a bunch of new designs coming, and every bit of profit from merch sales goes into the production costs of these videos. Click the link and check out the store today. We head down the trail to analyze the first feature, some slippery rocks and roots.
Can you see how there's water flowing down? You should always ride where the water is flowing.
Okay.
Because that's where all the grip is.
Oh.
You did that about 10 times better than those other guys. Your arms and legs have got to move and your torso's got to stay still.
Okay.
What a lot of people do, myself included, is that they'll kind of stay stiff and go with the bike, whereas if you do this,
Yeah.
like, you're just so much more in control.
Doing a little bit better with the lowering of the handlebars a bit now. Like that made a difference. I felt it anyways.
Now Camillo can load the front wheel more effectively, his steering has improved, and he's able to go where he needs to. He rides the feature again with just as much ease, and his confidence is building. One more time for good measure, and we move further down the trail. Up next are some bigger rock rolls, and Camillo is unsure of how his bike will deal with the bottom of the first one.
It makes me feel like I'm gonna go for the bars.
Okay, let's get down and take a look at it.
Okay. That actually doesn't look that bad. It always looks horrible from up there, and then
Yeah,
you
that's
get
why
down
you've just
and
gotta, like, you can come down and look at it. What mountain biking police is gonna stop you from looking at various bits of a feature?
I remind Camillo to visualize and walk out his line, saying out loud what he's going to do. I go one step further and put 2 sticks on the ground for him to ride between. This takes away a decision that he needed to make and frees up his mind to focus on how to ride properly. I rolled down the rock calmly and again reassured him that his bike will roll through without much effort. And rolling in on his first go, he handles it no problem. After watching his bike handle the first compression, I figured that we could do with letting out a touch more air out of his fork, all in the quest to find balance between the front and the rear. The second roll in this sequence looks a bit more intimidating, but again, breaking it down as much as possible, learning from the tire marks on the trail, and visualizing what needs to be done. I was confident that he'd be completely fine doing this one, and the next roll after it.
Think he's got it?
He's got it.
He's got it.
He's pretty good.
Still. Yes. Yes. That's it. Yeah! You went so fast!
We are cooking on gas here, and it's time for a bit more of a challenge.
The trick is, down here, roll round this slab, kind of like a berm. How are you going to get over this thing is by carrying the speed off this thing. You want to kind of pump the bottom of this. And just with your feet, you just want to go, and your bike will just effortlessly come
Roll
up the
up.
top.
I rolled down the feature, again having the goal of reassuring Camillo.
Off the brakes. Pump. And off we go. Just that body position. Strong attack. Whew.
You can see here that he fell into old habits with his body position and lost the pressure on the front wheel. Sitting back on the bike, you can see how this has affected his steering when he needed it the most. So after telling him this, he goes back up again and rolls down in a lot more control.
You did it! You came over so chilled, it was a bit of an anticlimax. What gear are you in? Drop it down 2 gears. Chris was saying that you looked a little bit hot coming in. And I think that's because you were like going, what? But look at that suspension. That's like perfect, I'd say now.
With one final lap of this slab, we could continue on. The next roll, we used the same tactics. Plan the line, visualize riding it, watch me ride it, and then press the send button. Another success and another feature ticked off. But coming up was the crux of the trail.
That's the thing. This thing looks crazy, but the moment your tires roll over it, job's good.
This feature is a lot steeper in person, as with anything on video. As long as you are relaxed on the bike and stay as centered as you can, you should roll through it just fine.
The movement you need to do is exactly the same that you were doing on the wooden roller, and you did that like 10 times. We got to it. I didn't think he would have it, but now I think he does. Nice and easy. Oh my god, you did it!
I realized I was really far back there. I don't know how that looked, but I felt like my butt was down here.
He's done it, and no hesitation whatsoever.
Did you ever feel any pressure today? No, I don't think so. I didn't feel pressure from you. I felt pressure from myself to do it because I'd done everything else. I'm like, I cannot leave here without doing this one.
With one more move left to tick off, it was time for the toilet bowl. My tip for this move is to treat it as 2 separate sections. By focusing on getting up to the top of the rock first, you remove a lot of the stress. Instead of thinking, I have to do this entire corner, just getting yourself up there is a lot simpler. Because when you're at the top, the bike almost rolls itself around the turn, and you can pop off the end. Same thing again, make a plan, watch someone do it, then head up and execute.
I was like, I celebrated too early, and I was like, he's done it!
So there was nothing left to do but go up again and do it perfectly.
But how did it feel when you did it?
Oh, it was awesome. It was glorious. It was like, wow. It was like, I can do anything now.
Yeah.
There's lots of lessons for everyone in here, but I'd like the main takeaway to be that it's okay to stop on a trail and just really look at something. Let's get his final thoughts from the day.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to ride more black trails and try a lot more difficult stuff now.
If you're with a rider that isn't as confident as you are, stop and make sure they're okay. Don't just speed off down the trail and abandon them.
Things I did to your bike and your setup, do you think that made a difference?
Yeah, for sure.
In what way?
Like there's a couple things that I was finding before where either it was too hard or it was too soft. And I think that the suspension settings now from doing that stuff felt much better.
If you enjoyed this episode and would like to see more content just like this, hit the subscribe button so you can catch next week's superstar overcoming their fears. Hit the like button if you've made it this far, and most importantly, watch it twice. Cheers, punters. I'll see you next time.